Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Tuesday to you. Very busy weather across Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico states here as the tropics stay very active. And we may not be finished after this week in the Gulf as well. So I'm going to share my screen and talk about our active pattern here. We've got Hurricane Lidia, which is bearing down on the Mexican coast this morning, a powerful storm expected here. And that is going to move across Mexico. In the meantime, we've got the tail end of a front, which has developed into a weak area of low pressure, but weak maybe on the pressure scale, but a lot of moisture with it, likely to head northward towards Texas and Louisiana and link up with the moisture from what's going to be left of Lydia. The two are going to combine and cause a lot of rain here for the Gulf of Mexico states here over the next 48 hours. And then what's left of that is going to be taking a trip towards Bermuda here this weekend. So wind may not be as much of an issue out of these as the rain. We could be dealing with significant amounts of rainfall for many here from Mexico and South Texas right on into the central and eastern Gulf states, and maybe some severe weather as well across portions of the Florida Peninsula here by Thursday. That rain and wind likely to head towards Bermuda. And then we've got to keep an eye on things around Central America and Mexico again in about a week for potential slow development. And that will be something we need to keep an eye on here across the Western Caribbean and across the Yucatan and Central America. Here's a look at the Atlantic side of things, and we do have now AL 93. Right now, it's going to be a challenge to get this to form into a named system, but it is still going to be a system to deal with here. It's likely going to merge with a front moving over the Western Gulf here by tomorrow morning. Regardless, we're going to see winds that get to gale force or low-end tropical storm force tomorrow over the northern Gulf. That includes the offshore waters of Louisiana, the oil platforms, some of the marine interests there. But right now, just a 20% chance that it forms into anything subtropical or tropical, kind of more of a hybrid system. Now, we are likely going to see our next depression or storm here towards the second half of this week. This is AL 92, not a threat to land at this point, but the track of it is a bit uncertain. You can see this area grows around 40 west here. 70% chance it becomes tropical depression and then tropical storm Sean, S-E-A-N, by this time on Thursday morning, and an 80% chance that it becomes a tropical storm probably before the end of this week, if not the weekend. Here's a look at the water vapor imagery showing you the Atlantic basin first, then we'll talk a little more about the Pacific, because it is going to be something that will be worth taking a look at here. And you can see this is AL 92 southwest of the Cabo Verdes over here, tracking kind of west-northwest in this direction. You can see we've got a large area of low pressure near the Azores and a trough sticking down from it all the way into the central Atlantic. And that trough is going to break down this ridge of high pressure here over the islands and allow the system to gain some latitude, which is good news, of course, as we don't want to see anything threatening this area. It's more than likely that we're going to see something in this area here in the next few days. Now in the Gulf, you can see Hurricane Lidia just moving onto the map over here on the Mexican side. That is going to cross over into central Mexico and weaken, but the moisture with it will survive and link up with this boundary that's right here across central and south Florida, as well as deep south Texas. Now on the tail end of the boundary, low pressure has spun up in here, and you can see it's not very organized, but it is going to link up with this front by tomorrow, and all of this moisture is going to stream east-northeastward across the northern portion of the Gulf, setting up a very significant amount of rain and some strong winds across this area in here as well. The rest of the U.S., quiet for now, except we do have a trough still in place, bringing some chilly and unsettled weather to the Great Lakes and interior parts of the Northeast. Still a lot of dry air moving down into portions of the central U.S., but that is going to shift as we are going to take a look at another potentially big storm getting ready to move into the Pac Northwest. I say potentially big, depending on where it ends up landing here. You can see the low pressure system here is west of Washington State. That is going to move in eastward, and the farther south it comes, the more direct impact it's going to have on the Pacific Northwest. But that storm is likely going to continue across the country very quickly, bringing potentially some severe weather into the plains here Thursday into Friday, and then significant amounts of rain here into the mid-Atlantic and portions of the Northeast and the Great Lakes by the time we get to the weekend. So another cool wet weekend is expected here over the Great Lakes into portions of the Northeast. Here you can see the biggest feature on the map is now Hurricane Lidia. It is strengthening, wind shear has lessened, and it could continue to strengthen pretty significantly today before landfall this evening over this portion of Mexico, just north of the Riviera. But you can see a lot of high clouds streaming out of it here as we have a very active trough over the eastern Pacific, sending that moisture all the way directly across into the central Atlantic. So kind of one cloud band that starts over here and continues about 4,000, 5,000 miles all the way over into the central Atlantic, just north of the island of Bermuda, which I think is right over in here somewhere. So in the Caribbean, we do have a flare up of storms as well to kind of keep an eye on. Right now, just a weak trough, but you can see there's some convergence here on the south side of this front. A little bit of convergence on the Pacific side here as well, near Costa Rica and Panama here. So we do have to keep an eye on this area. It's not likely to develop into anything anytime soon, but there is kind of a gyre that's expected to form. What we need to do is wait for Lydia to move out of the way so wind shear will lessen, but there are some models that are hinting at potentially some gradual development somewhere in here, and it's really tough to say if that's going to be on the Pacific side or if it's going to try to sneak into the Caribbean. Typically this time of the year in the Caribbean, we do need to keep an eye on things in the Western Caribbean. And if you're in Florida and Cuba and the Yucatan, you certainly need to keep an eye on things as well. This can be kind of a second season for this area in here. So right now, nothing certain, but models do indicate that there could be some trouble down the road. In the Eastern Atlantic, two features, but the second one's not likely to stay developed. The first one potentially will be. That's 92L. You can see it moving towards 35 west here and gradually becoming potentially our next system. The Canadian model shows that system developing here by Thursday into a tropical storm. We do have that lower pressure as well over the Gulf here, and I will talk a little bit more about that. Then jumping over towards the Bermuda Triangle here, just south of Bermuda. You can see the Canadian doesn't really keep this system extremely intense. It has kind of a tropical storm for a while here, tracking kind of west-northwest, but you can see a ridge of high pressure tries to rebuild in here in about a week. And that may try to force the system a little bit more to the west than maybe what you would expect. At the same time, you have lowering pressures around Central America, and this run of the Canadian says something could try to form here east of Honduras and Nicaragua in about a week, or so. So we do need to keep an eye on that. I don't think we're going to see Sean here become a significant issue. It is aimed at Bermuda, but it likely, with this big high moving into the eastern U.S. in about 8 days, will find a weakness and try to come around it and not be a threat to any land. However, and I'm not saying this one model is correct, but it is something we need to keep an eye on. We do have this area of lower pressure forming here northeast of Honduras, and the Canadian says in about 8 or 9 days, around the 19th, it could become a tropical storm, and this is actually pretty aggressive. I don't know if this is going to play out, but it has something heading towards Cuba here as a hurricane, and this is obviously something in Florida we need to keep an eye on. But this is just one model run. It is not, the exact, not what I'm forecasting at this point. It'll likely change quite a bit. You can kind of see here, Sean gets onto the edge of the map and then recurves out to sea here by the 19th and 20th. Now here's a look at the GFS model, and this one isn't out as far, but you can see it has Sean over here, weak tropical storm by the second part of this week. It's got our front dangling across the Gulf, low pressure tracking towards Bermuda here on Friday and tracking just south of Bermuda. And that's something you have to watch in Bermuda as well. The pressures drop on this. We may have a subtropical storm. The next name on the list would be Tammy at that point towards Thursday night and Friday. So I could see how Bermuda tries to get under a tropical storm watch for what, the 5th or 6th time this year. So keep an eye on that. You can see there's a lot going on here in the subtropics, lowering pressure, but for the time being, the GFS does not have anything forming in the Western Caribbean through the end of this week. The run before does show some lower pressures, but does not get anything out of the landmass here of Central America. It just doesn't get anything to go in here. So, we're going to have to keep an eye on it. You can see the GFS trying to bring Sean closer to Bermuda, but you can see also a non-tropical low over New England. Not this weekend, but the following weekend. So once again in the Northeast, potential weekend trouble coming here for 3 straight weekends, it looks like. But right now, we are seeing a gyre, but we're not seeing anything super organized in this area. So the Canadian is an outlier. So at this point, I think we do need to watch it, but I don't think we're talking about an immediate threat for at least the next 9 or 10 days. After that, we'll have to keep an eye on things, of course. Here is a look at AL92. This is our invest in the East Central Atlantic. You can see it's got a lot of thunderstorm activity, but it is lacking central core. It's got kind of a mid-level low with it. If you take a look at the visible, it should start to be getting light out over here. you can see there's a spin in the atmosphere, but not at the surface. This is kind of more in the mid levels, about 10 to 30,000 feet up. So two areas of thunderstorms, but not a concentrated core yet. So until that happens, this system will struggle to develop. I think it does get there eventually, but it's probably going to take a few more days. Our model ensembles, or our model guidance envelope, shows generally a northwesterly track. Some try to bend it back towards the left, so we have to keep an eye on that, of course, and some try to turn it more northward. So a lot of uncertainty, like we saw with Philippe here a week and a half ago. The Canadian ensemble, the deterministic model takes it all the way over to, I don't know why it says south, but that's actually should be 56 west. Call your friends at Weatherbell for that one. But the control and the ensemble mean are much farther to the right. They all follow a similar track here up until about the weekend, and then there's a split where the operational goes farther west and the ensembles go farther east. And so far this year, the operational model seems to have been leading the charge. The ensembles have been playing catch up. So I will keep an eye on it for you guys, but right now it looks like it's not going to be any threat to land. Here's the intensity forecast. You can see a lot of uncertainty. Several models do not develop this to a tropical storm, others do. And of course, there's an outlier that tries to make it a hurricane, but I don't know if that's really going to be the case. Now, closer to home in the Bay of Campeche and really the Western Gulf, we do have very disorganized shower and thunderstorm activity. Yes, this is an invest. The models are running something on it. No, it does not look like something that's going to become very well organized. Taking a look here, there really isn't. There is a low pressure center, but it's so discombobulated. It's probably somewhere in here, but you can see just way too broad at this point to wrap up into something that we really need to be concerned with as far as tropical development. Now, because there is a front here, there's also the remains of what was Tropical Storm Max here. We do have this feed of moisture continuing northeast, and that is eventually going to head towards Florida and the northeastern Gulf states, and even Louisiana here later tomorrow on into Thursday. So even though it doesn't really generate any kind of an organized spin, we have these two areas of showers and thunderstorms that are producing very heavy rain, and both of those are aimed towards Florida and towards the northern Gulf here in the next couple of days. Yes, the models are running on it. I don't want to have people get too caught up in this, but they show, generally speaking, whatever weakness here that's ongoing, we'll try to track north over the next couple of days and then turn right. And you can see a lot of spread here at the 48-hour point. That's Thursday morning, from somewhere here southeast of Brownsville to as far northeast as near New Orleans, or just south of New Orleans, say Plaquemines Parish, or even over towards Baldwin County in Alabama. So there's a lot of spread, but you can see kind of a decent amount of agreement that whatever low pressure is here turns northeast and makes a quick right towards the Emerald Coast of Florida, then crosses and comes by just south of Bermuda here at the end of this week. So by the time it gets out into here, I think it does have a shot at potentially becoming a subtropical or even tropical system. But at that point, we're just talking rain and wind. We're probably not talking a strengthening hurricane at that point. The Canadian model ensemble shows it kind of bending back to the left and then making a right turn and moving into Louisiana here somewhere near New Iberia or over the Atchafalaya Bay. And then obviously it's inland, so it has a tough time of developing, but will still bring heavy rain into southern Alabama and Georgia where that rain is needed. Could also bring severe weather into Florida. And then that moves offshore here by, say, Friday morning and then races quickly east towards Bermuda. And nothing really making this a hurricane. There's one model that tries to develop it here south of Bermuda towards a Category 2, but everything else says wind speeds, generally speaking, are 45 miles per hour or lower, and most of that's going to remain over the water. The European ensemble, I'm going to show you guys the tracks here. You can see good agreement here that it makes a hard right, and this is Thursday evening and already over the Florida Gulf Coast and moving eastward. Even some low pressure solutions are already past Florida and into the Southwest Atlantic. And then as we move further on in time, we see some tracks closer to Bermuda, but kind of bending away as a big trough is going to kind of push things east-southeastward here by Friday night. Here we do see our next developing system here, likely Sean. There's actually a few ensembles that try to develop the wave behind it, but don't strengthen it in anything past depression form. You can see, I mean, what's left of this Gulf system has already raced off into the Eastern Atlantic by early next week. So it's going to be moving very quickly, this front just zipping quickly along our subtropical jet. And what it may do is entice our next system, Sean, here to try to make a right turn around this low pressure. You can see a split here where we've got weaker solutions bending back to the left like we saw with Philippe last week. Stronger solutions turning right along and getting absorbed by this front that's moving away by next Tuesday. So a lot of uncertainty here still, but we definitely have to keep an eye on things. And then you can see, let me move that back. Next Thursday, a few solutions do try to develop low pressure here north of Honduras in the Northwest Caribbean. Most of them, though, develop it on the Pacific side. So we've got kind of a split again. We have a split with Sean where there's some weaker solutions that try to go towards the Caribbean, stronger solutions turn it away. And then in the Caribbean, we've got stronger solutions forming it on the Pacific side, weaker solutions trying to form it on the Caribbean side here, the Caribbean side. So until we see any kind of low pressure forming, this is going to change. A very fluid forecast that I don't think we need to put a lot of weight or a lot of belief in just yet. I know people are going to talk about it, but I think we've got time before we can get into the weeds with things here. Now on the Pacific side, Max made landfall here yesterday afternoon. Winds were actually 65 miles per hour, so it developed very quickly but ran out of real estate, and the remains are heading towards Mexico City and don't have any wind left, just some rain. Lidia, on the other hand, is strengthening significantly up to 85 miles per hour, so it's already come up 20 miles per hour since this time yesterday. Very warm waters here in the opening of the Gulf of California should continue it to strengthen. The official forecast has it going up to Category 2 hurricane intensity, but many models in the tropical realm show it getting to Category 3 or even possibly getting close to 4. So we do need to keep a very close eye on things as this comes into landfall this evening here just north of Puerto Vallarta. Here's the circulation center heading in this general direction. You can see what's left of Max over here. That is pretty much falling apart. And then here's our Gulf system. So we've got kind of 1, 2, and 3 all expected to merge in this general area here, more than likely going to be somewhere here in the Western Gulf. However, Lidia is going to be a problem here in the next 24 hours for the Mexican coastline. You can see the central dense overcast is growing significantly. Wind shear has lessened. We don't have visible satellite yet. It's still dark out there, but we will likely see an eye form somewhere in here as it comes in close to landfall. And you can see, ignore these two because they're just climatology. We can see good agreement. This comes very close to Puerto Vallarta. And that time frame looks like it's going to be later this evening and then weakening as it moves across central Mexico. And what's left of it will make its way towards South Texas and the Western Gulf. But at that point, it'll get absorbed by the front that is going to be moving through the Gulf. You can see the HAFS is a little bit too strong here, but it shows a very strong core forming here, pressure dropping into the 940s. I don't think it's going to be Category 4. You can see the launch point's a little too high. It's got it as a Category 2 right now, a strong Category 2, and it's not there. So it's already starting a little strong, but you can see it is strengthening it pretty significantly here in the next 18 to 24 hours before landfall, and then weakening, of course, as it moves. And then it's already a remnant low by the time we get to this time tomorrow morning. Here you can see the Hurricane Center forecast, a large area under a hurricane warning. That's the red. We have a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning just to the south and a tropical storm warning to the north. The key messages here show that it's going to be a dangerous hurricane. Hurricane warning area is going to see hurricane force winds starting this afternoon. Heavy rains, flash and urban flooding, along with possible mudslides inland over Nayarit, as well as Sinaloa and Jalisco here in western Mexico. I apologize if I murdered the pronunciation here. My Spanish es no bueno. But a dangerous storm surge coming in near and just to the south of this center. And that's going to be just south of Puerto Vallarta here as this moves onshore later on this evening. Swells will also cause dangerous rip currents all the way up to the Baja of California, the west coast of Mexico, maybe even all the way up into Orange and San Diego counties. So high surf is expected. And here's where the hurricane warning is in effect. Las Islas Marias and Playa Perulo to Escuinapa. Tropical storm warning from Escuinapa to Mazatlan and Manzanillo to Playa Perula. And a hurricane watch from Manzanillo southward to Playa Perula. So we are expecting potential hurricane conditions in this area, but certainly tropical storm conditions later on today into tonight. In the hurricane warning area, we will see conditions going downhill this afternoon, and then very dangerous weather expected late this afternoon, especially the first half of the night tonight until our storm moves inland. And here you can see the area that's going to be under the gun. Puerto Vallarta is actually on this bay here, so it's a little bit protected. But when you get south of there, you'll see nasty surge around Los Corrales. Carayes, that's it. All the way down to Villa del Mar and Las Cruz de Loreto. So a pretty good population area in here in the Bahia de Banderas. and that's where the surge is going to rip in here. But if this storm comes a little farther south, this area could escape the worst of the surge, and it's instead going to be farther down the coast. Here's the remains of Max. You can see all the thunderstorm activity pretty much gone as it passes south and east of Mexico City. So that's all we can really say about Max. It was a quick-lived storm, but it was certainly a nasty one with all the flooding that we're seeing across this region. And then a look at the bigger picture for the U.S., and you can see here, we're going to see this landfall here right around 1 or 2 in the morning here tonight, and then our low pressure system in the Western Gulf. And these two kind of just get absorbed by our front here and then very quickly race eastward. Very quick moving system here. It's already going to be passing Bermuda by Friday morning. Our next system that is ripping into the Pac Northwest here, it's going to move onshore this afternoon and then kind of reform as this trough moves inland. We're going to see heavy mountain snow over the Tetons, as well as the Colorado Rockies and the Wasatch of Utah, and significant amounts of rain and wind, and cold rain and wind over northeast Colorado, eastern Wyoming and Montana, right across the plains. And this rain is going to quickly build up and move into the Great Lakes region here. We'll also see potentially strong to severe storms over areas like Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, northern Missouri, all the way into southeast Iowa and west central Illinois. But the timing here isn't great for severe weather, so I think we see some, mainly at the get-go here on Thursday evening. But then things are going to kind of fade some as everything moves east of St. Louis and of Champaign-Urbana and towards Indianapolis. Maybe a second round of severe weather possibly here Friday evening in Illinois, Indiana, and western Kentucky. I don't think a big tornado outbreak, but I think we could see some stronger winds coming from this as it's a quick moving storm. And then even Saturday, there is a warm sector setting up here in southern Virginia, North Carolina, and into southeast Georgia and South Carolina. I would not be shocked if we saw a little bit of severe weather in this region here during the afternoon Saturday. That includes Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Charlotte, Rock Hill, Columbia, Raleigh, North Carolina, Roxborough, even up to Mecklenburg County in Virginia. So keep an eye on things in the warm sector here on Saturday, as we've got tropical moisture, we've got a fast-moving low pressure wave. Unfortunately, that low is going to bring us some really gross weather here over the weekend across New England into the Mid-Atlantic region. We may not be too bad Saturday in coastal New England, but Saturday night and Sunday will be wet and cool and even unsettled heading into early next week across this region. We've got just a nasty, slow-moving trough that dives southeast. It'll be cool and wet and just really gross here around the Great Lakes into New England. Notice also we do have a lot of rain coming through the Gulf states, and I've talked about this quite a bit, so I'll zoom in to show you guys some detail. But south of this low pressure track, there is a marginal risk for severe weather around the Big Bend towards the west central peninsula of Florida. So Tampa Bay area, keep an eye on things here late tomorrow night and into the day on Thursday. Lots of rain here. The ensemble shows significant departures from average both over the Gulf and Mexico, as well as the Pac Northwest, and over the northern plains into the Great Lakes, as well as across Nova Scotia. Just very wet over the next week. The NAM shows that there will be some ingredients in place here for maybe a few isolated tornadoes just off the Gulf Coast here tomorrow night, and then spreading into the Big Bend and into west central Florida here early in the day on Thursday. Not a big tornado outbreak, but certainly there's some potential here to see a tornado or two. I'll show you the NAM composite, and you can see our heavy rain moves into Louisiana tomorrow and then spreads into Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And then you can see in the warm sector here, we do have a couple of lines of storms to watch on Thursday across north central and central Florida here. The model only goes 60 hours, but we definitely have to keep an eye on things as we get closer to this event. On the north side here, we will just see very heavy rain over parts of Georgia and Alabama and South Carolina. The rain is needed, but it's going to all come at once. So expect nasty weather tomorrow night into the first part of Thursday before things move offshore Thursday afternoon. Here's a look at potential winds from the NAM. You can see gusts are going to get up over 50 to 60 miles per hour over the oil platforms here. Even though I don't think we're going to have a tropical system, we could see gusts up to 50 to 60 over the Chandeleur Islands, over the mouth of the Mississippi River, the Delta region in here, as well as the Emerald Coast and coastal Alabama on Wednesday night. We could see gusts getting over 50 miles per hour, so sporadic power outages are possible here. And then as we get into the day Thursday, some gusts over 40 miles per hour possible over South Georgia, South Alabama, and the northern half of Florida, and really nasty wind when you get east of the Florida and Georgia coastlines here, but that should stay well over the water. The NAM shows total rainfall amounts here are going to be extensive, maybe 5-6 inches in southeast Louisiana, especially St. Bernard, Plaquemine, Jefferson, Lafourche, and Terrebonne parishes. We also could see up to 4 inches in Mobile and Baldwin counties here in Alabama, and locally high amounts even into central Georgia and into eastern Alabama, where we do need that rain very much. So it's been very dry, so this rain will be welcome, but it could be pretty heavy right on through the first half of the day on Thursday, and southeast Georgia could see significant amounts of rain as well. Look at the European model, also shows this significant rain here. It's a little farther east with the heaviest rain over northern Florida and southeast Georgia, but it does have that significant amount of rain. It could even be raining all the way up to Myrtle and into Brunswick County, North Carolina, maybe all the way up to Wilmington as well. Taking a look at wind gusts from the European, you can see it lines up pretty well with the NAM, although the strongest winds are a little farther east here, south of the Florida Gulf Coast, and then especially over the open waters of the Western Atlantic. And that does obviously concern me if you're in Bermuda. We could see significant rain moving in here Thursday night, and by Friday morning, potentially amounts up to 2 or 3 inches, and then significant rain even into early Friday, where amounts could get to 4 to 5 inches in Bermuda. Most of that will be in a 24-hour stretch from Thursday afternoon to Friday afternoon, according to the European model. Winds will also be a potential issue here from Bermuda. We could see gusts getting over 30 miles per hour Thursday evening, and then over 50 to maybe 60 miles per hour early in the day on Friday. So we may have a subtropical feature forming here, maybe even a named storm, and I would not be shocked to see Bermuda get put under a tropical storm watch if this forecast holds. And we're talking Thursday night and early in the day on Friday for tropical storm conditions. The Western Pacific is busy. Guam is kind of getting spared here from Typhoon Bolivar. Winds are 80 miles per hour, but that is going to become a very powerful typhoon here and recurve. And recurving typhoons in the Western Pacific generally translate to active weather in the U.S. down the road. As the jet stream gets more ample, it provides us with greater dips and valleys, meaning more severe weather, more active weather. But right now, fortunately, the worst is moving away from Guam, but we have a storm poised to strengthen pretty significantly. Our Guam radar shows the eye of the storm now moving away west of Saipan. I don't know why the radar beam is being filtered out here, but likely it's pouring across Saipan. Guam is under a flash flood warning. You can see kind of these bands pushing in from the north, and this is the second storm to impact Guam this tropical season. But fortunately, I do believe winds are going to stay below typhoon strength here on Guam this evening, local time. But this storm is going to get very powerful. A super typhoon expected in here. Fortunately, going to stay east of Japan, and you'll see it track into the North Pacific, south of Alaska here in about a week. So I appreciate y'all's time today. Thank you so much. If you do want to, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends, especially those of you in the Gulf. We're going to be dealing with significant weather all through the month of October. Those of you in the plains and even into the Northeast are dealing with cool, unsettled weather and plenty of rain here in the next couple of weeks. I do have a membership option for you all as well. It's $9.99 a month if you feel led to. Of course, no obligation, but if you'd like to support me and get faster responses and more perks, I'm happy to offer those to you as paying subscribers. And as always, I give you thanks and I give all the glory to God who has given me the strength to do this every day. The Lord is good, folks. I know we're seeing all kinds of things going on, especially over in the Middle East and Israel. That, of course, is very difficult for someone like me to see. I'm actually originally of the Jewish faith, a converted Christian, but obviously Israel's the promised land, and the folks there have just been blindsided here. And my thoughts and prayers are with everybody over there of all religions, of all types, and all races. I feel like in the end, no weapon should prosper, even though we see war. We see attacks. We see all kinds of things going on. But the prophet Isaiah 54 in the 54th chapter, verse 17 said that no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. God says that there's going to be weapons, but in the end, they're not going to prosper, that God is going to come through and save those folks that are serving the Lord. He also says to Paul in Romans 8:1, there is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. The world will continue to attack. There are evil people out there. People are going to continue to take attacks left and right, spiritual attacks, violence, war of words. But in the end, those who walk and choose to go with Jesus Christ will live eternally. They'll be freed from sin, freed from death, and given eternal life. And that is the good news that has been shared from God. That is His holy word. That is the word I wanted to share with you because um, while it's tough to see what's going on right now in the world, and I think I feel I'm completely blessed. I'm kind of in a spot, I don't want to say I'm completely safe, but I feel like I'm in a spot where I don't have to worry about something like that happening every day like those folks are. I do know that in the end, it doesn't matter. Despite all the attacks, despite all the disagreements, I am with Jesus Christ and I'm there to live eternally. And I wanted to share that good news with you to encourage you and lift you up because I totally believe that that gift is there for you as well, no matter how low you feel you are on the totem pole, no matter what lack of worth you feel like you have. I felt worthless for a long time, but I eventually saw that God had bigger plans for me and that I am indeed a child of God and that spiritual kingdom is there for me eternally. And I pray that it's there for you as well, no matter what you're going through. So I hope you all have a blessed day. I really do appreciate your time today. And as always, I'm praying over your safety and your health and well-being. Have a wonderful day. See you all tomorrow morning.